He was born a slave, raised in chains, but his dreams were never imprisoned. The world told him, "You'll never be anything," but he proved that destiny isn't written, it's created. Every scar became his weapon, every betrayal his teacher. He didn't stay a slave, he rose as a sultan. Remember this name. Sultan Baybars wasn't just a man, he was a revolution carved in courage. He was born a slave, raised in chains, yet his dreams were never bound by the walls that surrounded him. Sultan Baybars' life was not written in comfort or privilege. It was forged in fire, betrayal, and the will to rise above everything that tried to keep him down. From the deserts of Kipchak to the grand throne of Egypt, his journey was a defiance of fate itself. Every challenge that was meant to destroy him only sharpened his spirit. Every insult became fuel. Every defeat became a lesson. The boy who was once bought and sold like an object became the man who commanded armies and crushed empires. His story isn't just history. It's a testament to what happens when a human being decides that no one can define his worth but himself. Imagine being taken from your homeland, torn away from your family, and sold into slavery. Most would break under that weight, but Baybars didn't. Instead, he learned, he observed. He absorbed the world around him like a silent storm waiting for its time to roar. As a slave, soldier in the Mamluk ranks, he trained harder, fought fiercer, and thought deeper than anyone else. He knew that power doesn't come from birth. It comes from discipline, patience, and the courage to act when others hesitate. In the ranks of the Mamluks, where strength was the only language, Baybars became fluent. His sword spoke louder than his status. His mind was sharper than the chains that once held him. While others sought titles, he sought mastery. And through that mastery, he became unstoppable when the Mongols swept across the world like an unstoppable fire. Kingdoms burned and empires crumbled. They were feared as invincible, the bringers of death who spared none. But Baybars saw what others couldn't. He saw that even giants bleed. When others trembled, he strategized. When others surrendered, he stood. As a commander, he turned chaos into opportunity. The Mongols had never been defeated in open battle until they met Baybars at Jalut. There, the slave who had once bowed to masters made the conquerors of the world bow to him. That victory didn't just save Egypt. It saved the entire Islamic world from destruction. It was the moment when destiny changed direction, when history itself took a deep breath and whispered his name, but power didn't make him blind. Baybars understood leadership in a way few rulers ever do. He knew that a kingdom built on fear alone collapses from within. He rebuilt what war had destroyed. He restored justice in a world torn apart by greed. He valued knowledge as much as he valued the sword. Under his rule, scholars were honored, trade flourished, and peace had a chance to breathe again. He didn't just conquer lands, he conquered hearts. And yet, even in his greatness, he never forgot where he came from. That humility, born from pain, kept him human. He treated the throne not as a symbol of power, but as a responsibility to serve. Because Baybars knew that true strength is not measured by how many kneel before you, but by how many you lift up with you. Every betrayal he faced became another lesson carved into his soul. He was betrayed by those he trusted, challenged by those he served, and envied by those who could never match his brilliance. Yet he never drowned in bitterness. Instead, he used betrayal as a mirror, to see who he was, what he believed, and how far he was willing to go. Every wound became a reminder that pain is not an obstacle, it is a teacher. Baybars learned to fight not only with his sword, but with his silence, his patience, and his strategy. He learned that revenge fades, but legacy lasts. And his legacy became eternal. The same people who once saw him as nothing more than property now spoke his name with awe. The same empire that once owned him now owed him its survival. Baybars didn't rise by luck, he rose by will. He built alliances, crushed rebellions, and balanced power with justice. His presence commanded respect because he earned every ounce of it. In the heat of battle, soldiers followed him not out of fear, but out of faith. They knew that behind that fierce exterior was a man who believed in something greater than himself. He believed in the idea that no human being is defined by their past. He believed that freedom is not given, it's taken. And when he took it, he never gave it back, even as he sat on the throne of Egypt. Baybars never allowed arrogance to poison his heart. He remembered the cold floors he once slept on, the whips that scarred his back, the voices that told him he was worthless. Those memories became his compass. They reminded him that the measure of a man is not how high he climbs, but how deeply he remembers his fall. Baybars ruled with wisdom forged in suffering and compassion tempered by struggle. His greatness came not from the crown on his head, but from the courage in his chest. He didn't inherit power, he earned it, and that made all the difference. Sultan Baybars stands as a living paradox, a ruler born from bondage, a warrior molded by pain, a king who rose from dust. His life screams a truth that echoes through centuries, that destiny bows only to those who refuse to bow to it. The world tried to break him, but he used every piece of his brokenness to build his empire. He didn't wait for opportunity to knock. He carved it out of stone with his bare hands, and through that he became immortal, not just in history books, but in the hearts of those who dare to believe that greatness can rise from anywhere. Because the story of Baybars is not about royalty, it's about resilience. It's about the fire inside a man who refused to die in chains. It's about proving that no matter where you start, the end can still be legendary. He was not born into privilege. He was not raised among scholars or nobles. He was raised in the harsh silence of slavery, in the cold shadow of servitude, and yet his eyes always looked beyond the horizon. Sultan Baybars understood something that most never do. The world does not give you power. You take it through your will, your discipline, and your refusal to surrender. He didn't rise because someone opened the door for him. He broke it down. From a nameless boy chained and sold in a foreign land to one of the greatest sultans in history, Baybars' story is not about luck. It is about raw, relentless determination. He believed that strength was not something you are born with. It is something you earn, one battle, one scar, one choice at a time. When Baybars entered the Mamluk ranks, he was just another slave, soldier, a warrior owned by a master, but even then he carried himself like a leader. He fought not to impress, but to evolve. He learned the art of war, the tactics of survival, and the psychology of power. Every fight taught him how men think, how fear controls them, and how courage breaks that control. He understood that the mind is the sharpest weapon a man can possess. While others focused on strength, Baybars mastered strategy. He learned when to strike, when to wait, and when to let his enemies destroy themselves. His intelligence was his sword before he ever drew steel. The soldiers around him began to see something different in him, something unshakable, something destined. Baybars didn't just follow orders. He studied them, questioned them, and when the time came, he rewrote them. It was his mind that made him dangerous to his enemies and indispensable to his allies. During the chaos of the Mongol invasions, when the world trembled under the hooves of an empire that seemed unstoppable, Baybars saw opportunity where others saw doom. The Mongols had burned cities, slaughtered kings, and crushed empires. Fear was their greatest weapon, but Baybars was immune to it. He had already faced worse. He had already been stripped of everything, which meant he had nothing left to lose. That made him fearless, and fearlessness is something no enemy can defeat. When the Mongols came for Egypt, Baybars became the shield. He organized the defenses, rallied the troops, and refused to let history end in ashes. At the Battle of Ain Jalut, he used not brute force, but brilliance. He lured the Mongols into a trap, broke their momentum, and shattered their myth of invincibility. That day, the earth shook not from the charge of horses, but from the roar of a man who refused to let his world fall. That victory did not just save a nation, it saved a civilization. It proved that no empire, no matter how powerful, is eternal. It showed that destiny bends to the will of those who dare to fight for it. But even after that, Baybars didn't rest. He knew that power gained must be protected, not with fear, but with justice. As Sultan, he rebuilt Egypt from the ruins of war. He strengthened its armies, secured its borders, and reformed its administration. He restored trade routes, encouraged learning, and supported the scholars and scientists who shaped the golden age of Islamic civilization. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a builder. He understood that the sword can win wars, but only vision can build empires. His rule became a symbol of strength balanced with wisdom, power guided by purpose. Yet what made Baybars truly extraordinary was not the battles he won or the palaces he ruled, but the heart that carried the memory of every hardship. He never forgot what it felt like to be powerless, to be owned, to be treated as less than human. That memory shaped the way he ruled. He valued loyalty over lineage, courage over blood, effort over entitlement. In a world obsessed with status, he proved that character is the only true nobility. His rise gave hope to the hopeless. It told every servant, every soldier, every forgotten soul that greatness does not belong to those born into privilege. It belongs to those who earn it through struggle. He became living proof that no man is too low to rise, no beginning too broken to lead to greatness. Even his enemies respected him. They feared his strategy, but admired his sense of justice. He punished betrayal, but he rewarded loyalty beyond measure. He led his army from the front, not from behind walls. He shared their dangers, their hunger, their nights of exhaustion under the stars. When his soldiers looked at him, they didn't see a ruler. They saw one of their own who had risen through fire. That bond made him invincible. Baybars understood that leadership isn't about commanding, it's about inspiring. He didn't demand respect, he earned it through his actions. He showed that true authority comes from integrity, not intimidation. His name became legend, not because he conquered, but because he transformed. He turned pain into power, loss into learning, and struggle into strength. He took every label the world threw at him, slave, servant, soldier, and replaced them with one word, Sultan. His story is not just one of victory, but of evolution. He proved that greatness is not something granted, it's something claimed. He didn't rise because he was chosen by fate. He rose because he chose himself. Every day he fought not just for power, but for the right to define who he was. That is what made him eternal. He lived with purpose, ruled with vision, and left behind a legacy that no empire could erase. Sultan Baybars didn't just change history. He redefined what it means to be unstoppable. Power was never given to him. He took it with his courage, his vision, and his unbreakable belief that he was meant for more than the chains he was born into. Sultan Baybars lived by one truth, that destiny belongs to those who fight for it. His life was not a story of luck, but of defiance. He didn't wait for someone to save him. He became his own salvation. When the world saw a slave, he saw a future ruler. When others bowed to fear, he learned to command it. From the dirt of captivity to the marble of palaces, his journey was carved by sheer will. Baybars was a man who refused to be defined by his past, and that refusal became his greatest weapon. He understood that every setback, every rejection, every scar was not punishment, but preparation. As a young Mamluk, Baybars endured humiliation and cruelty. He lived among men who believed that loyalty to power was the only path to survival. But Baybars saw beyond survival. He aimed for dominance. He trained harder than anyone, studied every tactic, every weakness, every silence. He learned that leadership is not about control, it's about conviction. He didn't need to speak loudly to be heard, because his actions spoke louder than any words ever could. He rose through the ranks not through privilege, but through merit, and his brilliance couldn't be ignored. In a world built on hierarchy, he forced them to see his worth. He proved that skill, discipline, and courage are the only true currencies of power. He fought in countless battles, each one testing not just his sword, but his soul. And every time he emerged stronger, sharper, and wiser than before. When the Mongols came, their reputation alone was enough to make nations surrender without a fight. They were the storm that left no survivors, the army that crushed empires. But Baybars refused to bow. He saw the fear that paralyzed others and turned it into his advantage. He studied the Mongols, their speed, their tactics, their arrogance. He understood that even the fiercest enemy has a weakness if you're brave enough to look for it. At the Battle of Jalut, Baybars led with a mind that was as precise as his sword. He used deception, patience, and timing to outthink an army that had never been defeated. The Mongols fell into his trap, and their defeat became the first crack in their legend of invincibility. That victory was not just a triumph of strategy. It was a victory of spirit. It was the moment a man who had once been owned by others became the protector of nations. But victory didn't make him complacent. Baybars knew that the same fire that lifts you can also burn you if you forget its purpose. He ruled not as a tyrant, but as a visionary. He restored what war had destroyed, united what corruption had divided, and built systems that would outlive him. His reign became known for justice, innovation, and strength. He rebuilt mosques, schools, and fortresses, not just to display his power, but to strengthen the soul of his people. He understood that a ruler's legacy is not written in gold or stone. It's written in the hearts of those who live under his rule. Baybars ruled like a soldier and served like a king. He knew the value of every grain of wheat, every drop of blood, every moment of peace. To him, leadership was not a right. It was a burden carried with honor, yet his greatest strength wasn't his sword or his throne. It was his memory. He never forgot the boy who was sold, the pain of being powerless, the sting of humiliation. Those memories kept him humble, focused, and hungry. They reminded him that every moment of glory was earned through years of struggle. While others wore their crowns with arrogance, Baybars wore his with purpose. He didn't rule to be worshipped. He ruled to prove that greatness can rise from the lowest depths. His entire life was a message to those who dare to dream beyond their circumstances. He proved that no chain is strong enough to hold a mind that refuses to be broken. He didn't just free himself. He redefined freedom. His enemies tried to destroy him through betrayal, envy, and deceit. But Baybars had already mastered the art of resilience. He knew that betrayal is the price of greatness, and pain is the tax of progress. Instead of letting wounds weaken him, he used them as reminders to never trust too easily, to never stop moving forward. He turned his scars into armor, his losses into lessons. He didn't dwell on what was taken from him. He focused on what he could still build. That mindset became his greatest empire, the empire of inner strength, because true power doesn't come from armies or crowns. It comes from the mind that never quits and the heart that never stops believing. Even at the height of his rule, Baybars remained a man of purpose, not comfort. He worked, planned, and fought until his final days because he believed that legacy is built through action, not memory. Every wall he built, every reform he introduced, every victory he achieved carried the same message: rise, even when the world tells you to kneel. His life is proof that no beginning is too humble, no struggle too great, no dream too impossible. Baybars' name became more than history. It became a symbol of strength, of self-belief, of courage forged in the fire of adversity. He showed the world that destiny doesn't belong to those who are handed power. It belongs to those who take it with their own hands and never let go. Sultan Baybars' story is not just a chapter in history. It is a roar across time, reminding us that greatness is never inherited, it is earned. He rose from chains not by chance, but by choice. He refused to bow to fate, and instead forced fate to bow to him. From slave to sultan, from dust to dominion, he became living proof that no obstacle can hold back a mind set on victory. His life teaches one eternal truth: the world remembers not those who were born powerful, but those who fought, bled, and rose to claim their place among the powerful. Baybars' legacy is the fire that whispers to every soul in struggle. You were not born to be broken, you were born to conquer.